it's a delight to announce that Raghu, CEO of Retail Prestige Retail Group, is with us as well. Pretty interesting times, the way the market has shaped from the last IRF that we had. Clearly, there has been a lot that has happened, both negative and positive. Clearly in the last few weeks, the announcement on FDI and multi-brand retail being allowed has energized. And during the course of this day, there has been a number of discussions on how the multi-brand retail is going to impact the retail fraternity. And clearly what we are going to discuss is how this is going to impact the real estate fraternity as well. So I'm going to start straight with Vinay, Mr. Vinay Nadkarni, going detailed to you. Given that the FDI in multi-brand is going to be allowed, what do you feel is the scenario within the retail fraternity? And how does the Indian retail fraternity view this announcement by the government?
See, frankly, I think FDI and multi-brand retail, we have been hearing for so long that the excitement that was there maybe 4 years back, 5 years back when we started talking about it, it always kept going up and down. And end of the day, today, if I see, yes, it's a very good opportunity where the most important part would be, of course, getting access to foreign funds. That would be a big for Indian retailers. And as far as setting up franchisee stores or setting up any international brands in India, I think that would be an opportunity for them. But when I look at it from a retailer's point of view from India, yes, it's an access to international funds. That would be a big plus point here.
And it's a big tick from the Indian retail fraternity, I assume, getting FDI in multi-brand retail.
Yeah.
Raghu, likewise, a question to you is, how would this change the Indian retail real estate scenario?
I think for a long time we've been saying we don't have a variety of brands that are profitable to fill malls. So for me, and from a mall perspective, the best thing which has happened is actually this freeing up of single brand retail. Because I think we'll see so many more brands coming to fill up so many vacant spaces in malls. The multi-brand, the big boys are here already. Whether it's the Hypers that Vinay is doing or Walmart or Carrefour, any of these fellows, they're already here, they'll come. And the big numbers will come from them. But if we want hundreds of brands, hopefully we'll see that happening in the next few years.
Sunilji, this FDI comes with a number of caveats. And one of the caveats is that it's up to the states to determine whether they will allow FDI to come in within that state. How does this really work? Sort of I struggle in my mind to understand, how the logistics going to work, how is the structure of the deal going to work, and clearly the guys who are on the real estate side who are in non-Congress governed states means that they would have lost the opportunity.
I don't think over a period of time, it takes time for people in this country to absorb. Okay. Once they absorb, they'll see the benefits. And over a period of time, I think the real estate as well as the retailers have to work, make the governments understand the benefits of FDI, how will it help the back end. And once that happens, it will open up. It will take its own time.
Shrikant, you're the new boy amongst the big boys who've come in onto the retail real estate. Shrikant obviously represents the L&T Realty Group. He's the India head for that group. And they've delivered a very large retail mall successfully in Chandigarh. So two questions. What prompted you to get into this sector, one? And second is the intent to continue to grow within this sector?
Well, what prompted us to go, I can't answer. It happened 4 years back. But the fact is that at L&T we built a fantastic mall. All the things which a shopkeeper wants, we have tried to put it there. We believe with this FDI opening, we'll have much quality retail coming in. They will have their learnings and the Indian retail quality will also go up. So we are looking forward to a very good time which the consumers will have, which the retailers will have, hopefully we will have. We are doing another big mall here in Bombay as well. So as of now, we are there. We will continue to be there. Thanks.
And Shrikanta, I asked this question to many developers, but given that you're here, I want to ask you this question as well. Given an opportunity for you to do retail, residential, and offices, what is the sector that you would choose?
That's not a fair question. But having said that, as a developer, it has to be a proper mix. We cannot do all of one type. And even in a very good residential, which people think is nice and profitable, you need a real retail piece for the people to stay in. So retail has its own space in all of this. And as a developer, we need to look at having a proper mix rather than one or the other.
Really, Shilpa, from your side, you've seen the evolution of malls over the last few years, and clearly in the sort of mid-90s, we saw malls of about 200,000 square feet emerge. Then in the early 2000s, we've seen that go up to 300 or 350,000, and now we're seeing malls that are being built between 500,000 to say 700,000 square feet. So two questions. One, do you think that going forward 4 years from now, malls will go up to 1 million square feet from where we are? And second is, what has been the evolution and the experience as we have graduated in increasing the square footage of these malls?
Anuj, I'd just like to also add to one of your previous questions on states, which Sunilji had said. Just to add to it, I think water finds its own level eventually. So while it is already very clear about pro-FDI and anti-FDI states, it's statistically demonstrated that by doing FDI, you will increase employment and the overall GDP of the state. So it's likely, and it's eventually going to be, that all states will come around and gradually become pro-FDI. So that I just wanted to add to that. Secondly, on your question of scale of projects, I'm actually getting a feeling of deja vu on this, because if you rewind to IRF 2005, 2.5 years prior to the Lehman days, we were talking about shopping centers going from 300 to 400, and suddenly everybody wanted to talk about 1 million square feet. I think suddenly post-Lehman, in the post-Lehman world, there were, I know of projects that converted the top 2 floors to offices. Some of them were, they stopped building half of it. Some of them just converted the entire project into something else. Some of them were left built and empty. So, or built, occupied by retailers, but no consumers. So I think that irrespective of market cycles, today we are more upbeat because of FDI, or let's say stabilizing of the economy or the reforms. But the answer for scale is not completely aligned to this one point alone. It's really also dependent on what cities, whether we are talking about B-grade cities, A-grade cities, what distances are people willing to travel, what real estate costs are permitting, what scales of projects, because there is something called productivity in the business. So if I look at a smaller city like a Siliguri, or something even more conservative in scale size, then I don't think that 1 million square feet will just fly simply over there. So it really depends on which city we are talking about, what is the positioning of the project, and so on and so forth.
Vishal, you've done a sort of mixed-use development, and it's amongst the most successful that we've seen, where you've got healthcare, retail, hospitality, office, residential, education in one big unit. If you were to do just the retail, how does the math for that work out? Would it be sustainable, just pure retail box that you were to deliver and inherit the cost of the land?
Okay, I'm assuming that you're referring to the same location.
Yes.
If I have to do this, only the mall in the same location, I think it would be almost as viable a proposition as it were within a mixed-use development, purely because I think the city of Bangalore has been decentralizing since the last 10 years or so very well. So it moved towards the south, moved to the west, and then it's going towards north. So we are more on the northwest side, and we are actually moving, decentralizing very well as a city. Having said that, Bangalore is also a very homogeneous city as far as the population mix is concerned. Therefore, it becomes easier for a marketeer to reach out to its target groups. Bringing a mall of this nature in a location of this type is certainly one that is, it provides a good, you can say, probability of success, because A, it is the city is moving in that direction, and B, the development itself that we have created. If you have to look at the mall in isolation, the design, you've seen the mall, so you've seen the design and the effort that we put in creating the mall of 800,000 square feet. It's been quite, appreciated, quite well appreciated, and it's a magnet on its own. So I think it would have been, as a standalone proposition also would have been quite welcoming.
Yeah. And Raghu, if I was just to continue with that question with you, you're doing a number of malls, you're doing half a dozen malls that are going to come up over the next 24 months. Is the math for those stacking up?
I think so. We haven't gone overboard in terms of size. With one small exception, in the smaller cities, we are around the 300,000 square feet mark, which we think is about the right figure. Okay. Only in one case did we build a slightly larger mall because the land dictated that and we couldn't put it to other use. In the larger cities, we've been gradually ramping up, but I think 600,000-700,000 seems to be a sweet spot. And I think anything more than that we can do, I'm not sure we'll do it profitably. Okay, so I think let's do it sensibly. I think scale will come over time. Maybe 1 million square feet is 3, 4, 5 years away. I'm not sure. At least from our perspective, I don't think we'll do that today, for sure.
Manish, one of the things that most of the developers struggle is really after having completed the mall, what is the exit for them? Clearly many of them come in from the residential background and, you construct residential and you're able to sell. You do offices and you're able to find investors, both institutional and retail investors who buy offices. Clearly in retail malls, we're sort of struggling to find that once you've completed the mall and that it is operational, what is the exit? Are there enough institutional buyers or you really need to go out and do a strata title sale to exit the mall?
I think first of all, good that some malls did bad because the speciality will now come back. All of us want to do everything. I remember when we did Ansal Plaza long years back, and when Unitech then announced 1 million square feet, all of us said, oh, they're crazy. And today we are adding another 800,000 to that. So the one part of the whole thing is that only do the job if you know it well, otherwise don't do it. We want to do the leasing ourselves. We say mall management is also what we know. We also want to do the facilities ourselves. Half of the people don't even know the difference. So, if you want to be in this business, you have to work with the specialist. There's a special guy who can do the retail, the people sitting on the table. There's special people who can help them get onto the board, and so on and so forth. Okay, this whole thing of a strata sale or a REIT, I'm doing 9 malls. I'm selling all of them. I've got 2 malls, 3 malls operational. One of them I solely own, which is Rohini, and it's not doing great. And there's another one, Great India Place, all of us know, is rocking. So this whole logic of it's a sold mall situation or a lease mall situation, it doesn't vary me because I have been the mall which we sold is the most rocking mall. So and we're doing 9 malls, we're selling them, and I think we have no problems in getting those investors.
That's a very interesting point, Manish, and I fully appreciate where you're coming in from. I just want to turn this question to Vinay because he's running one of the largest supermarkets in India. Whenever we heard Manish say that, he's been very straightforward, saying is, look, we need to exit. We're not finding institutional buyers. There are hardly any large, high net worth individuals who can buy the full mall. So whilst we're going to manage it and make sure that the experience to the customer remains the same, but ultimately we need to start a title and sell it, and that's the only way the developer will be able to get back the money. You are a large occupier in these malls. What would you say to that statement?
No, I mean, what I'd say is that, obviously, a developer who has decided that, in that development, that the model necessitates that there has to be sale, then so be it. I mean, it has to be sale. I mean, if I had a wish list, I would say that, ideally it should be an own model because, I mean, our experience shows that, wherever we've been in own models, generally the malls are better run, the occupancies are much higher, the tenant mixes are better. So, I mean, you have, all those considerations for which I would say that, ideally it should be an own mall. But however, I mean, practically, life is not so simple. So there are times when, you need to sell and, that's the model of the developer. And the only thing I would say is that, in those situations, what is important is that, again, the wish list would be, and for us, an important consideration when we do negotiate malls of that type is to try and ensure that, all the sold portions, that still there is a control which is being retained by the developer in terms of leasing, in terms of the mall management. So at least, that control should remain so that it doesn't get completely out of hand. It doesn't become, a mall where, you've got a whole lot of investors who are coming and trading in properties, and the result is that, a large proportion of the mall is unoccupied. And, which results obviously within a very short period in the mall becoming a failure.
But, I must appreciate both Monisha and Vinay, because I can tell you about a year ago, if we were to have this discussion, clearly both the parties would have taken position. I think in the last 12 months, so much has flown, below the bridge that each one appreciates the other partner. And, very truly, what you said is, Vinay, is correct. At the end of the day, we want retail real estate. Now, if there is no institutional private equity or funding from the financial institutions is not available, the best that we can say is to Monisha is make sure that you are managing the mall. Whatever you need to do behind to make sure, you are financially comfortable, go ahead and do that. May not be the ideal model, but, that's the only way that we'll have to reconcile. John,
Sorry, just to add a point, I'm not saying, the problem is why should we run our malls? Even if I sold it to a REIT, it would have been run from a JLL or some other company. I'm saying get the specialist onto the job. Not that I cannot do leasing. I cannot create a leasing team. But why should I do it? That's not my job. My job is to construct a mall, and I'm good at doing that. We are just getting into somebody else's territory is what I feel. If we are able to, whatever model we follow, and by the way, all of us know GIP occupancy rate is luckily quite high. So that's an advantage. Sorry.
Yep, go ahead, Shilpa. I was just going to turn it to John and ask him what happens in the more international markets.
Just to add to the sale point, I think there are also some very innovative financial structuring that is available today, where in absence of getting financial institutional investors, and equally not wanting to do a strata title sale, at an SPV level, smaller HNIs can own percentages of the SPV, which is correlating to the as a pro rata share of what they would have owned as a store. What that leads to is that you're able to get funding from smaller group of investors, and yet they are you're able to retain control at an entity level because you have not sold real estate, but ownership in the entity.
John, if I was to come to you on this point, clearly from the international perspective, want to understand that is this an acceptable model that you are able to do strata title sale?
In this case, we try as much as possible to have some specific clause in our contract where we will be able to have a preemptive right on assets and real estate.
Sunilji, are you finding going forward there are going to be lesser malls and retail real estate is going to be a challenge?
But I think, as you said, in the last 12 months, the retailer and the developer have started understanding and have got a better relationship. I think people have matured. People who understand what retail is from the real estate point of view will be in the business. People who have created a model like Unitech has, where they have sold the property off, but they still control, and the mall is successful. But a lot of other people who have not been able to do that. Now, if some people should actually work on the right formula which has worked, develop it. I personally believe that the most profitable business in real estate, in a long-term perspective, is retail. Now, there are a mall which was made 9 years back. He leased it for 75 rupees. Today he is leasing the same property for 500 rupees. And after 5 years, he'll going to lease it at 700 rupees. What will give you, on a long-term basis, a consistent return like this? Nothing. Now you sell it. It's all the way, I think with FDI coming up, I hope more money would be coming to the real estate to get cheaper funds to make better malls. But I believe that when you create a mall, it's very important for the size, what you get inside is a mix of a lot of things which we have learned over a period of time. And that has to be actually used in a proper manner to develop more successful malls. But today also I would believe in India, there are 24 malls only. Okay? Rest are all shopping centers. Right? So there are a lot of malls which are going to come up over a period of time. And there would be some shortfall, but that's okay. It's part of life.
So I just want to turn it out, Vinay, to you, and then I'll come to Raghu. One of the things that we used to discuss, 2 or 3 years ago, were really rents. That the developer understanding on rents is not there, CAM, and mall management. Do you think we've moved ahead over the last 2-3 years, and you're getting sort of different understanding on these 3 points when a developer comes to you and offers his property for your brand?
Actually, Anuj, it is, you can see this panel and you can understand. Till the past few IRFs, we always had a mall developer versus retailer kind of a debate. But now here we are sitting all on the same side and trying to work out a solution to what is happening. So I think it kind of speaks for itself. That over the last few years, as they rightly said, we have matured. We understand each other's problems. Retail is a tough business. India is a tough market. So therefore, it's going to be that much more difficult for all of us to, unless we understand each other's problems and work well. And yes, there are good solutions that have come about over a period of time on rent and CAM and so on and so forth. But what is most important is the understanding between the developer and the retailer has, over this couple of recessionary years, if I may say so, has really helped the growth of retail in India. Otherwise, the kind of stance that we used to see earlier was sure shot suicidal for retailers. But now I can see a lot of accommodation going on which helps the retailers to tide over certain problems and then, live for the next day.
So something good has come out of the bad times.
Yes.
And, Raghu, if I was to ask you that question, have the developers been able to appreciate the challenges that the retailers go through, and have the retailers have understood the challenges that the developers go through?
Is it better today? Yeah, I think it's much better today. But just for a minute, Anuj, allow me to go back to the previous one, but Sunil was talking. I think short to medium term, let's say up to 4-5 years, I think you're going to see a serious shortage of space, of quality malls. There are going to be plenty of malls, but especially now FDI has opened up in the next 2 or 3 years, you should expect better quality brands to come. I think space, unfortunately, I think rentals will go up. Okay?
Rentals will go up.
I believe only because if you're scrambling for space in a limited scenario, I believe rentals will go up. Hopefully, it will even out beyond 5 years when the supply increases. Because what's worrying me is I'm beginning to see a bit of the 2006-07 frenzy. People are chasing us for space again across various properties. And sometimes it's becoming irrational. So it's a bit of a worry. We have a slightly different view, which we started with Forum in 2004 when we introduced revenue share. So we're much more relaxed about that concept today. As far as CAM is concerned, we've never faced a problem. Just to give you an idea, our CAM in Forum, which opened 9 years ago, is the same as it was 2 years back. Very marginal change. So what we've done is we've tried to see where we can cut down. We've actually eliminated headcount, and we've rationalized our costs. It's a struggle, but we still keep on at it. So I think when we do that, then I think retailers appreciate that. And then there is nobody second guessing, is this guy making money on CAM? I think those issues have gone away.
And do you think that the retailers understand the challenges that the developers face?
I think to a very large extent, I would say, compared to 2-3 years back, definitely. I think both sides are much more open and transparent. End of the day, you can't fudge rental numbers, CAM numbers, or any other numbers. You can't fudge revenue numbers. Pretty much, it's open. I think we have a good feel what retailers are doing. Just to give everybody an idea, we started something in Forum 2 months back, extending it to all our malls, where we're wiring up the bulk of the retailers on our POS. So I'm getting daily sales data from everybody. Now, 2 years back, impossible to even go and suggest that I will get information. We have confidentiality clauses. It's only a daily dump. but I'm still getting information daily. I couldn't have dreamt of this some time back.
Sunilji, I saw Shrikant, smiling and saying, "Oh, that's great. Rentals are going to go up now." Do you think that is going to be true? Shrikant, you can.
I would like to first answer on the previous one on the CAM and rentals.
I think you may need to hold the mic a little bit higher.
I think the retailers are also understanding. When we have these discussions, they also want a win-win solution. And it's not only a number. Of course, it helps with L&D to say that CAM is going to be transparent. A lot of transparency has come into showing that, which is fine. I think the rental models have also changed from fixed rental to minimum guarantees plus the revenue share X, Y, Z. And as Sunil also said, that the quality malls are less. So part of this chasing will happen to quality malls and quality spaces like Forum, what they are running. And of course, these are innovations to get daily sales, which will be a great thing to going forward too. What happens to the rentals? The quality malls, the rentals will go up. On the non-quality malls, maybe they will go down. So that's what it is.
You should sign everything tonight before you leave.
We signed L&T Mall. Okay? I did not sign it earlier because they were very clear. They wanted, when they started building the mall 4 years back, they wanted 100,000 square foot hypermarket. And that time I told, nobody can do and make money with a 100,000 square foot store. Finally, when they agreed to do a 45,000 square foot store, we signed with them. The mall is going to make a little bit money. Hopefully, we will also make a little money. We as Future Group, we are not signing, and I believe all malls which understand the requirement of a retailer is getting signed and getting filled. And fit-outs are happening there. Malls which are not understanding the requirement of the retailer are not getting filled up. If they are filled up also, it's on paper. Getting fit-out started there is not happening. This is very important. Yes, rents would go up, but I believe most of the retailers have understood that if they are not going to make money in a couple of years' time out of that store, I believe they're not going to sign. Because if they sign it, they will have to close after 2 years, and that will be bigger problems. So, rentals is but I believe with the malls coming in the right sizes and the right areas and locations, rentals should not be an issue. But there are other issues in this country which a real estate guy does not actually understand, but we have been trying to speak to them. Look, there are other issues by running out of a city of Mumbai or Pune. There are other costs which are not there in Delhi, or which are not there in Bangalore or Hyderabad. But these are costs which puts us down by 3% on our margins. We cannot afford to run the stores in the city. So it's a whole shift, and I think people will, over a period of time, start accepting. But everybody is happy. There's FDI coming in. New retailers will come. They will not know, and they will sign our properties at 125, 150 rupees for a hypermarket. I don't think that's going to happen.
We're just coming on to that point only, which Sunilji ended. Do you think there's going to be a frenzy of signing spaces by the retailers? Those who would want inward investment to come in, and hence, size counts. So you would want to have a lot many more stores, and hence the valuation goes up. And second is to try and sign up everything so that they are able to block the foreign retailers to come in.
See, first of all, I don't know how much of, because single brand retailing 100% has been open for quite some time, and we see, a trickle coming in, not in big numbers. If the same scenario was in 2002, 2003, maybe people would have rushed in, because now with a hindsight, when they have seen others making money, losing money, and so on and so forth, they have a better hang of what this market is and how big that market is. Whatever the, consultants would paint a rosy picture. When you come to the market and actually see how it is happening, then you would realize that it is not a very easy market to really make money in. So if I am making good money in my hometown or my home country, it's okay to say that, okay, I'll lose money for the next 10 years in India. But when I'm not making money in my home country because of recession, I don't know how many people would be wanting to again lose money in this country as well. So therefore, I think there would be some time where it will take for the FDI thing to really catch up and people to be interested in India. The other part is, of course, the restrictions that the government has imposed in terms of 50% in infrastructure, etc., which will again have its own impact of people wanting to come in. So there are lots of doubts how many people will really get into India in multi-brand retail as well. But be it as it may, what I would really be worried about is if the malls actually look at higher rentals. We have seen that happening in the past. They start with higher rentals. End of the day, after 3 years, when the renegotiations happen, and if people are not going to make money, they are not going to make money, and they are not going to lose money for the sake of being in the mall. So I suppose it will ultimately get evened out. The mall owners also know, and the retailers also know. Ultimately, both of them have to make money. So which is what I call the sweet spot is what they will ultimately strike and settle. So I mean, opening malls with higher rentals is good. Eventually, like she said, the water settles at its own level, and the right mall mix will happen, and the right rental structure will get set in.
Very interesting. Vinay, just on that point, and this is a question that is being asked by a number of overseas retailers who are entering in here into India. They're saying is the cost of occupancy of doing business in India higher, lower, equal to more mature markets?
You said the
cost of occupancy. That means cost of rental, CAM, all the charges added on. Is it as a percentage of revenue? So your brand, for example, on a hypermarket or on the apparel side, would you say the cost of occupancy in Dubai would be as a percentage of the revenue same, lower or higher than your operations in India?
No, I think, there's no doubt that our occupancy costs here in India are definitely higher.
As a percentage of turnover?
As a percentage of turnover. So if I were to talk about, our hypermarket business, and if I were to compare rentals, not just, we don't have hypermarkets out of India, but if I were to compare rentals of, a hypermarket operation in India versus a hypermarket in Southeast Asia or in Europe or in Russia or in the US, we are, considerably higher on occupancy costs. It's not just, it's not just small factor. It's a big difference.
And we're hearing that the rents will continue to go up, which means...
Yeah, see, I think, as far as rents are concerned, just a reaction to, some of the discussion which happened on rents. See, I agree, I think with, what the general comment is that, see, at the end of the day, you'll pay how much you can afford to pay. Yeah. You see, and even if, there is an eagerness to get into a particular site or to be in a particular place, and for whatever the consideration is, you might be willing to, extend that gestation period by a little bit of time. But it's a little bit of time. So I think, the key thing here is that, between the developer and the retailer concerned, there necessarily needs to be some sort of an understanding on this. And that understanding really stems from, and I must say that over the last 2-3 years, this understanding has really, altered and developed and, become far more positive than what I remember maybe 4-5 years ago.
Good point.
And here it's all linked to, I think today, say within our sort of formats, which is the hypermarkets, there is this revenue share aspect of, the commercial, which has now become a very important part. And so I think a lot has happened. And, a revenue share is, at the end of the day, you share the upsides, you share the downsides. So, that principle is good. But having said that, there is still, I think we still have a lot more work to do in that area. Because I think, that has been understood, that has been taken on board, that's been implemented. But the issue which still remains, in my view, is really the understanding of this revenue share. Because what typically happens is that, in certain formats, like say, our format, which is a hypermarket, at the end of the day, in one mall, you will have one store, you will have one hypermarket. So when, from a developer perspective, they'll have lots of options because, there are many hypermarket players. So, you typically would get into a negotiation on that side. So I think, and when you get into a negotiation, when you start negotiating something like a revenue share, it becomes very dangerous. because you really need to understand what that revenue share stands for, because within a concept also there are differences. I mean, within a hypermarket, there are some hypermarket operators who have more of one category and less of some other category. And so, it really depends on what is the mix that you want for the mall. So for your mall, do you want more of, a non-food? Do you want a food? Do you want something more of a particular category of food? Do you want fresh foods? So what is it that you really want? And there is an implication of that on revenue share. So, these are, I think, nuances which need to be understood. And because, if you finally sort of give it to the highest bidder, you might end up in a situation where it might not be the best thing for your mall. So I think really a better understanding of that. And, while I'm speaking, there are people sitting, on this, in the same row who understand this perfectly. But I would say the larger part still of the developer fraternity have not really understood the nuances of this. So I think, that's one area where there is still a lot more learning. You have a minimum guarantee rental, which normally goes with the revenue share. How do you decide on that? So I think, the understanding of that again, I mean, necessarily has to be that, when you have a revenue share, what is an MG? An MG should be like a safety net. How do you define a safety net? It's got to be a function of your revenue share. You peg it at a certain level, which is, what you consider to be the potential of the site, and then maybe 90 or 80% of that would be your minimum guarantee. So these are factors which, still need, I think, more discussion and more understanding, but we've come a long way.
Yeah. Shilpa, just turning that point onto you. You've been in practice many years and you've seen the evolution of malls come through. Do you believe that the appreciation of design within the developer community has improved over the last 5 or 6 years?
Certainly, I think the concept, understanding that retail planning and design is one of the key drivers of the success of this business. It has definitely seeped a lot more into the developer community now versus 5-7 years ago. And having said that, there are still a lot of, design is a very nebulous and a gray area, because very often there is still a tendency for many developers to get swayed by fanciness associated with the design. And design has two components to it. One is core fundamentals of retail planning, which is what determines your basics: circulation, visibilities, access, egress, which is actually a fundamental given. Every shopping center across the world, which is even an average performer, needs to have this core fundamental in place. Now, the second component is aesthetics. Aesthetics, I feel, is still an area which could differ. It could be subjective. It could be let me even go ahead and say compromised to an extent. But retail planning cannot be compromised. And in fact, world over, it's a specialized field. And I think that acceptability in India has definitely increased over the last 3 years. But I think there is, as an industry, there is still a lot more to be desired. And we need to separate the two components of design, the aesthetics and the core fundamentals.
Last couple of questions before I open the floor for asking the panelists any questions that you may have. Really, John, from your side, you look at the IMAX, stuff. Would you say that it is a big draw of footfalls within the malls? And what has the experience of IMAX been, more internationally, to be able to attract footfalls as an anchor?
Yeah, worldwide, IMAX has undergone tremendous growth over the last 3 years. We've had incredible success all around the world. Our second largest market is China. We've got about 250 theaters that are going to be opening there very shortly. And we expect India to kind of start following that trend. We're bringing more and more local product into the IMAX network. So as a result, we've just announced our first Bollywood feature, which is going to be coming out next year. Doom 3 will be in IMAX. And what we've discovered is that IMAX theaters tend to provide additive business for footfalls and cinemas around the world. We had to prove that to the Hollywood studios in order to get more and more films into our network. And so what happens when you add an IMAX to a cinema is that you end up kind of turbocharging that. It's a way we're finding that people who normally would be at home on their computers or doing something else, because at the end of the day, for all the retailers here, there's a lot of competition, not only for dollars, but for retailers' time. And so IMAX is one way to get people out of their homes and back into the retail space. So in India, for example, we've got a number of theaters opening up over the next little while. For example, in about 2 weeks' time, we have one opening up in Forum in Bangalore. We're opening up in Phoenix Mills in Mumbai. And 2 more in Chennai coming before the end of the year. So it's our growth in India has gone from fairly stagnant level to quite dramatic turnaround overnight. The malls, which again every I think developer likes. They want cinema operators who have active Facebook pages, active social networking platforms, all those sorts of things which draw people into the retail environment. And IMAX tends to lean towards those sort of cinema operators as our partners. So as a result, it's kind of a mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah. So last question to Munish and Sunilji, to you. Munish, you've got malls in Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities, and going down maybe to Tier 3 cities. What has your experience been in really the Tier 2, Tier 3? And Sunilji, I want to come back on that question and ask, how has your experience on retail been in those Tier 2, Tier 3 cities?
I think it's just the same. If you've done your catchment analysis right, you can't go wrong anywhere you do a mall. I mean, you want to do a mall in a village, probably get to do a big bazaar, and then you try and get maybe even a pantaloon there might not work, but if you get a big bazaar there. So if your catchment analysis is right, and again coming on the rental thing, that's where I say, what does the specialist do for you? When you call a bank for a fixed deposit, do you ask him the rate? No, it's printed in the, if similarly I know a hypermarket is going to pay me, why does it pay 3% somewhere and 5% somewhere? No. If all that is established by a specialist agency for this area, this can be this kind of a revenue share and this kind of a rental, and if that is acceptable to the retailer and the developer, I think the marriage will be even more, more enjoyable in that sense. Talking back about the smaller cities, I think they have equally good potential, provided your catchment analysis is right. I mean, you can't do a Zara or a equivalent in a Tier 2 or Tier 3. As of now, these people have the aspiration, but you'll have to take the city forward step by step. You can't just get them to a metro level.
And Sunilji, your experience in Tier 2, Tier 3 as a retailer?
It has been a mixed reaction till date. But what we have seen, the Tier 2, Tier 3 cities in the east have done very well. Tier 2, Tier 3 in the west have not done that well. But again, as you said, it has to be the right size. And I believe we have to break our mindset. ये लक्ष्मण रेखा है दिमाग की, उसको we have to remove that. Every city, you cannot copy a select city mall and take it into Nagpur, okay? And you cannot take a market city into Dhanbad, okay? But people who have done that have, there is one case, I believe there's a mall in Maharashtra somewhere where we have a store. It's created a 600,000 square foot mall in a city which has a population of 1.2 million people. The whole city does not have that much retail space, and you've gone ahead and created a mall. It's not going to work. So I think from the consumer point of view, people there have evolved. I think today in the morning, someone was talking about, the person in UP, in Muradabad, is seeing the same Aaj Ki Baat, some TV channel, and the person sitting in Mumbai also seeing the same. The aspirations are there. And it is being converted, but yes, you cannot have a Pantaloons or a Zara in some place. But of course, what we have seen, cities, Tier 3 cities have accepted Pantaloons very nicely. along with the Big Bazaar, doing phenomenal business. From the third month, the store is profitable.
So they are maturing.
Yeah, they're maturing. But it has to be the right size, and location is very important in a tier 2 and tier 3 cities. If you go outside the city, you're finished.
Good. That's been very interesting. Before I open the floor for questions, I've got a sort of a 3-minute video which is put together by Oshan, and I would request you to go through this video, and we'll then have a couple of questions from the floor for these panelists.
So I already know that many of you already know what I will present. But for us, it's very important to be associated as soon as possible for the design of the shopping center. Our goal as Auchan is to sustain the investment plans through quality shopping centers. Welcoming, comfortable, and sustainable. So for this, we have a list of 20, I would say, fundamentals. Okay, but I would like to be shorter today and just to present some of them, which for us it's very important to pay attention at the very beginning of the design. Have been developed from our experience. Auchan has his own real estate company who own or manage today around 320 shopping centers within 13 countries. So these fundamentals are universal. They only contain the structural element to be maintained over time to make a value mall. So first, the shopping center must be visible, and when it is with an hypermarket, both have to be visible. That's mean the hypermarket and the shopping center. Hypermarket has to have a good signage. Access and car park must be adapted to the various types of locomotion. That's very important for cars, public transportation, taxi, bikes, pedestrian, and so on and so on. So the hypermarket entrance for us must be visible from the arcade's main access points, doors or moving walkway, to attract as many customers as possible. The customer pass is free of any obstacles. And for compact shopping center, the hypermarket entrance must be visible from the main aisle, close to the entrance and moving walkway. Car accesses have to be easy and visible. We require a minimum of 2 entrances for cars, and we need to have separate access and exits, which has to be organized for lorries and deliveries, with a dedicated service area for the hypermarket. So then the hypermarket sales area must be for us rectangular or square to ensure that it remains clear for our customer. A good shopping center has also to provide additional premises for the good organization, waste deposit area, meter area, and different transformer for the hypermarkets, offices, and so on and so on. So I would observe, but we will come back to the discussion we had before, that the level of the rent for hypermarket has to allow to be as discount as possible for our customers, giving the possibility for the developers and owners of the gallery to have higher rents if having a performing anchor for the hypermarket. And then allowing both of us to be profitable. We have some experience in Russia where we have some share revenue as rent, and many of them used to come to us, and they know that having our hypermarket in their gallery, they can increase the rent of the gallery by 30% more.
Thank you very much, Mr. Terry Martin. That's very, very enlightening, and thank you for coming here in India and joining us on this panel. With this, I'm going to open the floor for any questions that you have. There are a few mics, and you'll probably need the mic with the rain that's going on. So, any question for the panelists up here? Very happy to take that.
My name is Ismail. I have 25 retail store in the Middle East. Based on my experience, I have to raise some concern about the mall. Recently, we started retail stores in India, particularly in South India. First thing, I just want to raise a concern of the safety of people and mall. See, in UAE, the common area designated for the movement of people. If you see in India, most of the malls, they renting out after the completion of the mall, after taking the store. We have seen people, the mall management is renting out this common area, which is not supposed to do that. Along with that, there are, in so many malls, we have experienced the fire safety matter. Sprinklers are there, but it is not working. Like that, we are not complaints with these type of safety matters. That is the first thing. And second thing, there are so many things which we can standardize it, particularly the loading factor, the built-up area and chargeable area, because it's a very big confusion, that different mall management is using different type of calculation, which is, I think, all of you can, standardize it, certain thing. Same thing like that, this cam charge also, some of the malls people, they are not providing, actually cam charge will be the actual. So they are not providing any details. They are just saying that it is electricity charge is gone up, this is gone up, and these malls, that you have to take a standard which will be helping a healthy relationship and all. And one more thing regarding this revenue sharing part and all, I have an experience in a Bangalore, one of the mall, when I went for an agreement, they said, okay, revenue sharing I agreed, rent I agreed, and they wanted a joint account. That also I agreed. See, finally they said they will appointing the manager also. As a retailer, how can I control my retail business? So this is a very, difficult level of, retailers are facing. So I'm very happy that this FD is allowing and so many international players are coming. So better we have to prepare to compliance with, international standard. So we have to take that level, that directions now itself. Thank you.
Raghu, so just very quickly, 3 points that have been highlighted. One is that the common area, which should be left as open, is filled up and rented out. What's your view on that?
No. First of all, I think in most malls, even in some of our malls, we do have a few kiosks in the common areas. But we would never do anything which would impede the flow of traffic or the way customers walk through a mall or compromise on fire safety. It just adds to the overall element, especially when you have a large atrium to do certain activities and kiosks. I think it's welcome because it's a good relief for customers. But we would never do anything which would build or impede anyone, whether it's a retailer or customer. I don't think any good mall can ever do that.
The second is, the question is that there is very little transparency on how the common area maintenance is being calculated from a mall to a mall.
Just like there are good retailers and not so good retailers, there are good malls and not so good malls. I think if any of the retailers or the developers on this side today, I think you'll find a fair element of transparency. In any case, our CAM is subject to audit. We provide, our books are open to anybody who wants to inspect them. We provide a certificate. So, and it's done by one of the big 5 auditors in the world. So, that question does not arise. If you deal with small one-off guys who don't know this business and try and make money on scam, then I think you've chosen the wrong location rather than worry about honest or dishonest scam.
And the third point was really on the turnover rent, and he's saying is that the developer has said is that he would want to put in his own cashier or the till man.
This is the first for me. I don't have anybody here. I have no idea. I've never heard of this before, honestly.
Good. With that, we're going to end the panel. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the time that you've taken. Clearly there's been a lot of advancement that has happened from 2 or 3 years ago, where we were really trying to understand, this subject, this animal. From where we are today, there's a lot more collaboration. There's a lot more understanding. Clearly from the perspective where we have now come in, I think we moved away from the infancy or the nascent stage towards a maturing stage. I clearly think is that there is still, a way before we can actually say that we are a much more matured, dialogue between the community. But I think overall we're going on the right direction. So thank you very much once again, and thank you for the patient listening late evening on a Wednesday. Thank you.